These kidnappers were different, exceptionally sensitive to mobile phone surveillance, making it impossible for the police to track any clues through mobile signals. For this time-sensitive kidnapping case, checking mobile signals was the most useful and effective method. Now that the kidnappers had closed this avenue, the case was tricky. The adversaries were not easy to deal with. Greg Wong pondered for a moment and then instructed, "For now, continue with the 4 tasks I've assigned." From the video, this kidnapper can only be identified as overweight, with no clues about his appearance or age. His clothing doesn't resemble that of a young person, but we can't rule out the possibility of a young person wearing this type of jacket. The kidnapper we spoke with sounded like he was in his 20s, but he might have used a voice changer to disguise his real voice. It's currently impossible to confirm if the person in the video is the same one we spoke with. Well, that's all for today. Arrange for some people to continue investigating the surveillance footage, and the rest can go rest. After Jack Lin left, Greg Wong lit cigarette after cigarette, lying back in his chair and analyzing the situation. This case was not simple. The kidnappers had a strong anti-surveillance awareness and capability, meaning the police knew nothing about them. How many of them were there? What methods did they use to control Jiang Xiaobing in such a short time without the nearby residents hearing anything? Is Jiang Xiaobing alive or dead? If he is still alive, why won't the kidnappers let him talk to Lily Wong? If he is dead, why haven't the kidnappers hurried to complete the transaction, instead giving the police 3 days to solve the case before proceeding with the trade? Could it be that upon learning of police involvement, the kidnappers decided to abandon the transaction, making a feint by setting a 3-day deadline, during which they could dispose of Jiang Xiaobing's body cleanly? Afterward, it would be anyone's guess who the murderer was and where they could be hiding. Moreover, the kidnappers were extremely arrogant, showing no regard for the police and even treating the crime as a game. However, Greg Wong had to admit that this time the opponent had acted cleanly, leaving no witnesses or physical evidence and brazenly walking under surveillance cameras, making provocative gestures, yet leaving the police helpless. In typical kidnapping cases, the police could usually locate the kidnappers and hostages in a short time, surrounding them and then sending in negotiation specialists. Almost all kidnappers would psychologically break down under the police's combined soft and hard tactics and eventually surrender. But in this case, the key issue was that the police had no idea who the kidnappers were or their location, rendering all conventional kidnapping case strategies ineffective. If the 3-day deadline passed without any clue about the kidnappers' whereabouts, would they have to proceed to the transaction phase? This was something Greg Wong did not want to see. He thought deeply about the case. Besides the kidnappers being cunning and leaving no clues, he felt this kidnapping case was full of doubts and seemed to be more than just a simple kidnapping. Firstly, the choice of Jiang Xiaobing as the kidnapping target was unusual. Typically, kidnapping cases involve female students, but in this case, Jiang Xiaobing was a male and a troublemaker. Despite his young age, he was physically strong and knew how to fight. He usually walked home from school with a group of friends, making him a difficult target for kidnappers. Jin County, located in central Zhejiang, had many wealthy people whose children, attending middle or high school and needing to stay late for evening self-study, would be easier targets as they often walked home alone. Why choose him? Secondly, the kidnappers had clearly done their homework for this crime. They prepared many unregistered mobile SIM cards, purchased from different locations, discarding each card after one use. They also showed patience, as Jiang Xiaobing rarely walked home alone, and his route was not fixed. According to his classmates, Jiang Xiaobing had been walking with them recently, except for that day when he was alone, providing the kidnappers with their opportunity. This clearly resulted from days of tracking. Thirdly, if Jiang Xiaobing has indeed been killed, why haven't the murderers chosen to complete the kidnapping transaction quickly, instead giving the police 3 days to solve the case? What was their reason? If there's no progress by tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, they would have to prepare the money for the transaction with the kidnappers. Greg Wong was extremely annoyed, the kidnappers' provocative words echoing in his mind. He was determined to catch the kidnappers within these 3 days. Otherwise, he would have to meet their demands for the transaction, losing face entirely. However, upon further thought, if a transaction was indeed necessary, he wasn't worried, as he had a way to expose the kidnappers. The curtains were tightly closed, and Chase-Chen sat in a chair under a desk lamp, intently inspecting the suitcase in front of him. There were 2 suitcases in total, similar in size and appearance, both purchased from different small shops in Hangzhou. It had been some time since he bought them, and even he couldn't remember where exactly they were from. These were the most ordinary, off-brand suitcases. If the police tried to trace the buyers starting from the suitcases, not even the FBI could find out. The suitcases were large. He had calculated in advance that 3 million in cash, stacked up, would be nearly 1 meter high, so a smaller suitcase wouldn't work. However, there was another problem with so much cash. All in 100 yuan bills, 3 million would weigh about 66 pounds. Lily Wang and her group would certainly argue that the money was too heavy for a woman to carry alone, and they would bring a plainclothes officer, claiming to be her relative, to accompany her to the transaction. If that's what they say, I won't object. I'll just go along with their wishes, and they will regret it even more. Don't you think so, my most important friend? Chase-Chin couldn't help but smile. He was very confident about this. On another large table beside him, various chemical laboratory instruments were laid out, and underneath the table were piles of cigarettes of various brands, mostly cheap ones. Needless to say, these cigarettes were also bought in batches from out of town, and no one would notice a person bringing several cartons of cheap cigarettes. After a long time, he finally raised his head and rubbed his temples. Everything was perfect and foolproof. Actually, he had tested these 2 suitcases many times before and encountered no problems. They met his experimental results. Now, he was just reconfirming their reliability at the last moment. He always pursued the most reliable results in his experiments. Chemical reactions are the most fascinating processes in the world. In the vast universe, including within the human body, chemical reactions are constantly occurring. Even after you die, reactions continue in your body. Everything you use in daily life, every product, is a masterpiece of chemistry. It can be said that the rapid development of humanity over the past few centuries has been fueled by the leaps and bounds in chemical engineering technology. God created matter and the rules for matter to interact. Through continuous research and discovery, humanity has summarized these rules, inventing the most magical discipline of chemistry. Chase-Chin was filled with awe for all things chemistry. At the same time, he knew that theoretically reliable chemical reactions might not proceed as planned in practice. For example, variations in air pressure or the pH of a solution could cause significant deviations in experimental results. Sometimes, when an experiment fails, you can search high and low without finding the reason. For instance, theoretically, metals do not react with alkaline solutions. However, in practice, aluminum metal can react with both acid and alkaline solutions. Truly fascinating. Chase-Chin devoted most of his life's energy to the endless world of chemistry. Now, he needed to apply his knowledge to the most valuable practice of his life. Before returning to his country, he was shocked by the plan he had conceived. He had hesitations and conflicts. Can what I'm doing truly represent justice? Am I seeking to enact justice in my heart, or am I venting my inner emotions? Is there a more just and effective way to solve the problem than my method? For example, through the law? When he saw how the family, grandmother, and grandson were humiliated, their basic human dignity trampled upon, his inner conflicts were swept away. No, venting my emotions, fulfilling Jasmine Gan's wishes, and enacting justice are not contradictory. My approach is the best choice. Because the system is already perfect enough, and the law is already ideal. Look at that Constitution, how beautifully and movingly it is written. Where does the problem lie? Not in the laws, but in people. If a carriage doesn't move, do you whip the horse or the carriage? The answer is undoubtedly the horse. Yet, there are always those who think they are clever, focusing on making the carriage sturdier instead of figuring out why the horse isn't moving. They love to speak grand words, claiming to be rational, objective modern intellectuals, wearing a crown of moral and intellectual superiority, criticizing the angry crowd, saying we should give those above time to continuously perfect the system. In reality, these people are just twiddling their thumbs in boredom. Their logical thinking has inherent flaws. Does a villain wielding the sword of justice become a good person? Chase-Chin sneered disdainfully. Let me, the teacher, give them a lesson. Of course, my friend, you must participate in these activities. There's a little over a day left for Greg Wong. After the second day passed, the county bureau still had no leads on the kidnappers' whereabouts. Through their investigation, they had ruled out the possibility that the kidnappers lived in the residential buildings along Anil Road. At the same time, neighborhood inquiries made no progress, and there were no eyewitnesses to Jiang Xiaobing's disappearance. The information gathered from Jiang Xiaobing's classmates and friends was also fruitless, leaving them at a dead end. The county bureau sent videos of vehicles that needed to be closely scrutinized through surveillance cameras to the city bureau. However, due to poor lighting conditions and low resolution of the surveillance footage, image processing would take time, and the final results would not be very clear. By the third day, Lily Wong was completely restless, calling multiple times to ask if the kidnappers had been caught, much to Greg Wong's annoyance. He could only repeatedly reassure her. In the afternoon, Lily Wong called again, saying she had arranged to borrow money from a few friends and was now going to write the IOUs. She would also transfer the money to her account and make an appointment with the bank to withdraw 3 million yuan first thing the next morning. Despite Greg Wong's deduction that Jiang Xiaobing might be dead based on the kidnappers' refusal to allow hostages to make calls and the cooked deer incident, this judgment was merely a rational inference from the known clues. From the rigorous perspective of a criminal investigation expert, there was no evidence to conclusively determine that Jiang Xiaobing was dead. Telling Lily Wong rashly might cause her to lose control of her emotions, making it difficult to deal with the kidnappers and capture them all in one fell swoop. Therefore, both emotionally and rationally, it was not appropriate for him to share this unverified guess with Lily Wong. After much deliberation, Greg Wong agreed to let her prepare the money. He also had a plan ready for tomorrow. When the kidnappers called again, it was imperative to speak with Jiang Xiaobing. If the kidnappers stubbornly refused, it would increase the likelihood that Jiang Xiaobing had been harmed. In that case, plainclothes officers would accompany Lily Wong with fake money to lure out the kidnappers. The focus of the operation would then shift from rescuing the hostage to capturing the criminals. If the kidnappers agreed to the call, it would prove that Jiang Xiaobing was not dead. Greg Wong had plans for whether to use real or fake money for the transaction. He was fully prepared. If the kidnappers dared to make the trade, he would ensure they had nowhere to hide. With the plan set, that evening, Greg Wong had plainclothes officers monitor the main passages of the residential area to check for any suspicious individuals. After confirming there were none, he and 6 detectives, dressed in plainclothes, stealthily arrived at Lily Wong's home under the cover of night. Greg Wong brought a large bag of money, prepared as per the kidnappers' demand, bundles of cash with each bundle having a real 100 yuan note at the top and bottom, but only bank practice notes in between. The sides of the bundles were colored to make it difficult to distinguish the real from the fake without opening them. Greg Wong detailed to Lily Wong how to communicate with the kidnappers, including how to respond in various situations. Everyone was ready to capture the kidnappers the next day. The next morning at 9 o'clock, Lily Wong's phone rang with a call from an unknown number, prompting everyone to spring into action as planned. The technical staff at the county bureau immediately began tracing the call signal. Everyone on site wore wireless earpieces to listen to both the phone conversation and Greg Wong's instructions. Greg Wong, with a small microphone attached, could issue commands and directly communicate with the kidnappers through the phone. Lily Wong, though nervous, answered the call. The person on the other end spoke casually, "Hello, it's me again." Surprised or not? Expecting it or not? Lily Wong looked at Greg Wong for guidance. Although he had taught her how to respond to various statements, he hadn't prepared her for such a bizarre opening. Greg Wong silently mouthed, "Ask how to make the transaction." Lily Wong reluctantly asked, "Are we paying the ransom today?" "Of course, we gave the police 3 days, but unfortunately, they're too dumb to find us. I don't want to play this game anymore. Is the 3 million ready?" "It's still in the bank." The caller sounded slightly annoyed. "Why haven't you withdrawn it yet? If you don't want to spend the money to get your son back, then there's no point wasting time." Lily Wong hurriedly explained, "It's a large amount, 3 million. I had to make an appointment. I just made it yesterday and I can get it today." The caller laughed. "So you only made the appointment yesterday? It seems that the very capable director of criminal investigation, Greg Wong, must have been very confident in catching me these past few days. Haha. Sorry, I have to go now. We'll talk later." With that, the call ended. The technical staff at the county bureau reported, "Boss, it's a new number," and they hung up too quickly for us to trace it. Greg Wong snorted coldly and turned his head away without saying anything. A few minutes later, the caller rang again with a new number, Hello, it's me again. Haha. Do you find me persistent? Go withdraw the money now. Remember, it should be in bundles of 100,000 each. I'll inform you how to proceed with the transaction later. And don't even think about using fake money. If it's fake, I'll tear up the ticket. Also, tell the very capable Director of Criminal Investigation, Greg Wong, I don't mind him eavesdropping on the phone, but if he sends someone to follow during the transaction, I'll really get angry. Everyone was shocked. Many of the newcomers wondered how the kidnappers knew they were monitoring the call. Greg Wong was not surprised at all. The kidnappers were well prepared and would have anticipated police involvement in a kidnapping case, naturally monitoring Lily Wong's phone. Following instructions, Lily Wong asked, "Wait, before I withdraw the money, I need to hear my son's voice. Why should I satisfy this condition?" The caller responded. Lily Wong's voice choked up. You've never let me hear my son's voice. Is it because you've already? Oh, I see. You're worried that Jiang Xiaobing is already dead, and the upcoming transaction is just to extort money from you, right? Everyone was taken aback by the kidnappers' direct approach to their concerns. All right, Jiang Xiaobing is right beside me today. There's no reason not to let you talk to him. But I'll only give you a few seconds, the caller said, followed by the sound of footsteps. After a few seconds, the voice continued, I'm going to unbind your mouth now. You can only talk to your mom for a few seconds. If you mention your current location, I'll kill you immediately. Got it? A second later, a voice exclaimed, what are you doing? Don't. Jiang Xiaobing's voice was abruptly cut off. Xiaobing, what's wrong? What happened? What did you do to Xiaobing? Lily Wong asked anxiously. Nothing much. Didn't you want to hear his voice? I just touched his ear wound a bit to make him speak. Want to continue talking to him? He has a blood clot in his ear canal, can't hear me well, probably can't hear you clearly either. Do you need me to clean his ear canal so you can talk? Lily Wong quickly shook her head. No. I beg you, don't torture him anymore. I'll give you the money. Please just let him go. The caller laughed. See, cooperation is pleasant, isn't it? Don't worry. As long as we get the money, Jiang Xiaobing will be released. We don't want to kill Jiang Xiaobing. The sentencing for kidnapping and murder is quite different. We understand the law better than you. As long as you cooperate, everything will go smoothly. Go withdraw the money. See you in an hour. After hanging up, Greg Wong frowned and asked, was that Jiang Xiaobing's voice just now? Lily Wong was certain and anxiously asked, Director Wong, should we go withdraw the money now? Can you really save Xiaobing? Greg Wong rubbed his temples in frustration, puzzled about how Jiang Xiaobing was still alive. The kidnappers' words implied they didn't want Jiang Xiaobing to say too much because he knew their current location, fearing he might expose their hideout. This aligned with the kidnappers' stance and also proved that this group was much more sophisticated and cautious than typical criminals. Many ordinary criminals think they are smart and have a strong sense of caution, but often inadvertently reveal information during phone calls with the police, leading to their capture without understanding how it happened. These kidnappers, however, were calm and composed, with all their plans proceeding orderly, according to their own rhythm, undisturbed by police intervention. They were indeed a difficult adversary. Also, the recent conversation confirmed that the kidnappers' claim of being intermediaries and not having Jiang Xiaobing with them was true. Perhaps the cooking of the ear was just an act of cruelty by one of the kidnappers, unrelated to covering up Jiang Xiaobing's death. After a moment of thought, Greg Wong said, Lee, accompany her to the bank to withdraw the money. After they left, Jacqueline approached and whispered, Boss, are you really planning to let Lily Wong withdraw the money and trade with them using real cash? Let's see how the kidnappers want to proceed with the transaction before deciding. Going to the bank is a must. What if the kidnappers are watching Lily Wong and we haven't noticed? If the kidnappers don't see Lily Wong going to the bank, they'll naturally suspect the authenticity of the money. Now that we know Jiang Xiaobing is alive, our first priority is to ensure the safety of the hostage and Lily Wong, and secondly, to prevent the money from falling into the kidnappers' hands. But I'm wondering if the kidnappers really dare to make the transaction? Greg Wong said, if the kidnappers come for the transaction, there are three possibilities. First, they bring Jiang Xiaobing directly, in which case, we'll surround them decisively. Negotiators and snipers will be ready, using both soft and hard tactics, and the kidnappers will surely surrender. Second, the kidnappers send the intermediary, keeping Jiang Xiaobing hidden with other kidnappers. In this scenario, we need to control the intermediary first, then figure out a way to capture all of them and rescue the hostage. The third possibility is that the kidnappers ask us to leave the money in a specific location and come to collect it later. Even if the location is not suitable for police surveillance, we have placed a GPS tracking device in the money. If the kidnappers dare to take the money, they're heading towards a dead end. Jacqueline said, but we currently know nothing about the kidnappers. In any capture scenario, the kidnappers might not escape, but Jiang Xiaobing could still be in danger. Greg Wong's eyes flashed coldly, and he nodded. Indeed, in any scenario, Jiang Xiaobing might face danger. We'll have to deal with the specific situation as it arises. In the worst-case scenario, we give the kidnappers a Jiang Xiaobing, and not a single kidnapper gets away. At this point, with the location of the kidnappers and the hostage unknown, a direct rescue was impossible. The transaction had to proceed. Greg Wong had thoroughly prepared for all possible transaction scenarios. During the transaction, it would be best if the kidnappers brought the hostage directly, but given their cunning nature, Greg Wong suspected they would first take the money and continue holding Jiang Xiaobing hostage to ensure their safety.